Hi, this is Pete here at Raleigh and Helen's Musky Shop, and today we've got a special guest, an old friend of ours here at the Musky Shop, Joe Bucher.
Good to have you, buddy.
Hey, good to have you in the store, Joe.
Hey, I tell you what, it's just this is a great. Raleigh and Helen's been a customer of mine since Beth and I owned the business
Day
years
one,
ago.
right?
Yeah, I mean you're one of the original customers, and it's great to be here this afternoon. I'm just swinging by, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the shallowrator, and then I'm going fishing.
That's the way to do it. Yeah. Hey, speaking of that, talking about those old times and that type of thing. This is 25th anniversary year for Bucher Outdoors products and that. And so, tell us, how the heck did you start this company?
Well, actually, it's the 25th anniversary of the Shallowrator, but the actual company is 38 years old.
Okay.
So it's this whole company actually started because I needed to design some lures that weren't available.
Right.
So I had my favorites.
Sure.
Just like we all do, and all my friends that are in the lure business all make great stuff. But you get to where you like something or you want something modified. As soon as you start modifying something, it becomes kind of your own.
Right.
And I started modifying, and it started out with the original Bucher tail. I was fishing
the 700, what we call the 700 now. Right.
Yes, the original 700 Bucher tail was modifying and building lures. I wanted a big treble, a big single treble instead of lots of little trebles.
Yeah.
And I started putting a keel weight on it so I didn't get the roll. And,
yeah.
And blah 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 blah. And that's how it started. And so the Bucher tail was the original bait. That was kind of a modified version of the other lures. With the old original Skinner spoon, fluted spoon idea. And kind of that's what it was. It was kind of the original Skinner spoon. With a hybrid design with a big treble hook, and that's kind of how it all started. And then the same journey happened with the hard baits. Originally, it wasn't that long ago. Remember, we were all into wooden lures.
Yes, that's true.
We were really, and if it wasn't a good wooden lure, it wasn't a musky lure.
Right.
And really, a lot of the good saltwater lures, like the Cisco Kin whatever, were kind of like,
Yeah.
Guys weren't really into them because they thought they had to have this wooden lure thing. And then after a fish sunk their teeth into them and started to pull the screw eyes and stuff out of them, we started to realize that. Anyways, I did. It's like, hey, all my favorite lures, they're only lasting a couple weeks on a good guide.
Right.
You really get in the fish with them. And then, guys were coming out with balsa with bass lures that guys were using for muskies, and it was even worse problem.
Yep.
So I started going the opposite direction, started saying, okay, I'm going to design some lures and make them, as hard impact, paint holds up. I want a lure, once I start catching fish on it, to last. And so that's when we started to visit the process of designing plastic crankbaits, which was the original was the Depth Raider.
Right.
And that was our first journey into the whole plastic world.
So
we started there, and then after that, it's just started to morph into the other products that we now have.
Yeah. So when you first got going, it was basically you and Beth making lures in the home.
Yes, actually started on our kitchen table with $200. $200 and a bunch of components, and we actually tied the lures. I was speaking at a sports show, the old Arlington Sports Show in Chicago, and actually tied some lures so you can make a few extra bucks if we can have a few meals on the side.
Yeah.
Let's have something else to sell in the booth besides my guide service, and made a few hundred lures, and I sold them.
Yeah.
And voila, the Bucher tail. That's how the company started.
That's amazing. And I think the thing that's so compelling about the Bucher company story is, you guys basically started out a young couple. I'm a guide and I'm making these baits and selling a few here and there, and you expand and move up. And it wasn't just you. It was the little lady out there helping with the bookkeeping and working while you're out guiding and that, she's raising the family and running the company.
Listen, let's never underestimate how important a good partner is, and especially if it happens to be your better half. Beth Bucher really built the original Bucher tails. Actually hand tied them, built the original Bucher tails, and ran the company for over 20 years.
Yeah.
She was the general manager of the company for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing that Beth doesn't know about how to build a lure, how to fish the lure. My little redhead actually, you don't see her. She doesn't like to be on TV and whatnot. But actually, when we were dating used to come up here, and she caught her first muskie on Lake Minocqua
Okay.
in Stacks Bay.
No kidding.
Yeah, on a handmade version of the Booker tail. but she can figure eight, bait casting, and figure eight with the best of them. She just, she just kind of likes to lay in the weeds. But yes, she was very involved. We used to tie the baits on the kitchen table. I actually had the tying place clamped to the kitchen table. Get little Joey off to school and then build lures.
Yeah.
And then after we put them to bed, we package them till 1, 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
It is, and it's a great example of the American success story, right? You take something from nothing and build a nice company.
I'll
for
tell you
yourself.
what, Pete, and really, that was really the dawn of. That was before all of this stuff.
Sure.
You know, I mean, when we first started the Booker Till and that company, there were like a half a dozen products, and in the musky department, there was no Musky Shop.
No.
Like Raleigh and Helen's Musky Shop. That didn't exist back then. It was, a 5.5-foot pull cue musky rod, and you saw a half a dozen baits on the shelf, in black natural and maybe one other color. And the rest of the stuff was walleye and bass stuff, and there was musky as a product line, as a business, it just didn't really exist. We kind of started, we're part of that whole thing that started with the magazine.
Right.
I remember speaking at a sports show, because the speaker, the original speaker at the Milwaukee Sports Show, got sick, and they asked me, they walked up to my booth and to fill in, and I said, well, I'll do a musky seminar. I said, you're going to do a musky seminar here, nobody's going to show up. And, when I walked up there, started talking about muskies, and that was back before we had slideshows and, PowerPoint presentations and everything. So, but, hey, you got to start somewhere. But, that's how it all started.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us a little bit about the Shallow Raider and the 25th anniversary version.
Well, about 10 years after the original start of the Bucher Tackle Company, which was the original name of the company.
Yeah.
We actually started to get into the hard bait business, and the first lure was a Depth Raider.
Right.
The second lure was the Shallow
Raider.
Yes. And what's really interesting about the Shallow Raider is this is the original. The original one was the 7-incher. It wasn't the 5, and it wasn't the big Magnum. And what's really interesting is the 5 and the 9 are much more buoyant than the 7. And when we designed this lure originally, I designed it thin, and this whole thin profile and everything on the original bait was done for a reason, because we really wanted the bait, to be almost a suspending minnow bait, jerk bait. Okay. And now it's kind of like, guys are seeking it out for that purpose. And I've had people ask me both ways, well, how come you don't make this lure more buoyant like the big 9 Magnum or the 5 that we have that's so popular, the baby Shallow Raider? And it was the way I designed it originally. And what's really cool about the lure, you look at it now and you go, okay, tons of fishermen caught on this bait.
Sure.
Tons, both trolling and casting.
Yep.
And but originally I designed this lure to be kind of a finesse-style jerk minnow bait, and it just kind of morphed into all these other uses. In fact, changing, what's one of the cool things that your viewers and your customers would maybe don't know about this lure that's so unique about it is that it not only has that subtle flashing wobble action, but also you can really change things up on this lure by changing out the hook sizes. You can make it less buoyant and more buoyant by simply changing the hook weight and the hook size you use. And you can do that in pretty much any lure, but it really makes a difference on this bait. You can go from a bait this bait, barely floats. Right. And of course that's also very subtly changes with the style of leader you use. A lot of guys don't realize, when you start putting a big wire leader in the front of this, it changes everything. All these things balance differently when you have you're using different equipment, including fluorocarbon, which sinks. Yeah. But anyways, if you put heavier style hooks on here, you will have, for cold water fishing, you got a bait that's just going to hang. You want more hang time, and then vice versa. You want something that's going to be a little more buoyant over the weeds. Use a smaller leader so you have less weight in front of that nose, and use lighter wire hooks, which come pretty much standard on this bait, and you can fish it shallower, and it'll have more buoyancy. Right.
And actually, as I recall, there have been a couple changes on the stock hooks over the years that you've used.
Well, you know what, and the stock hooks, I mean, it goes back, Pete, you and I have been in this thing a while, so we kind of chuckle, because a lot of guys today they're spoiled rotten. They don't realize, you go to a store like your store here, and you Raleigh and Helen's guys stock everything.
Yep.
But you know, it wasn't that long ago. You didn't have all these hook styles and all these different split rings and all these different styles of line. You had one line, Dacron, remember?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And you had one leader, and most of the time, you know, leaders. Remember in the beginning, you couldn't even buy a good wire leader.
That's true.
You couldn't, and whatever hooks came in a lure, that's what's. And actually, most people didn't even sharpen them.
Right.
Nowadays, you know, even hook manufacturers have given us so many options. So what we try to do is we try to look at. Here's the thing, folks. We try to look at when we build a lure for marketing is what is the vast majority of anglers going to want and how are they going to be able to best fish this bait. Now, a guy who's trolling this bait maybe wants heavier hooks, but he's a smaller percentage of our overall audience. The average guy's going to buy this lure, not going to sharpen the hooks.
Right.
You know, so I want a bait that's going to, you know, it's going to fish well for the average guy. And these light wire black nickel, they're high quality black nickel hooks that are, you could argue they're factory sharp. They're pretty darn sharp.
Yep.
And they best service the vast majority of the people who fish the lure. You can change these hooks out and put heavier duty hooks on these baits like you can at anything you fish with for more specialized purposes. If you're going to do a lot of trolling with this lure, I would recommend heavier hooks unless you use a soft rod and a weak drag. But if you grab most of the musky rods we have today with no stretch lines, a tight drag, you throw this bait out and start to troll with it, boom, you hook a big fish, and these lighter wire hooks have a tendency to bend out. Right. But the advantage of the black nickel style hook is they have less tendency to bend because they have superior temper to them. So that's why we went to the black nickel, by the way, over the bronze. The bronze hooks are still great hooks, but they're not as tempered as well as these are. So
you get better hook penetration on it with the black nickel.
Yes, one of the keys with the black nickel is they definitely rust less than any bronze would. They're harder to sharpen because the temper is better on them. But one of the keys with the black nickel hook is that they have less tendency to bend. And whether you're using a little jig for walleyes or bass or using a bigger style treble hook like this for muskies, the black nickel hook has better temper. So if you fish with a light needle, you know, a needle thin treble hook like this, or even a single hook that's black nickel, you can be rest assured it's going to hold up and so the hook goes in without it bending. Bronze hooks that are light wire like this have more of a tendency to get in a little bit and then start to walk into a bend. Okay. And in fact, you know, even when you hook in the bone jaw of a muskie, the upper bone jaw of a muskie, even with a lot of these bronze hooks, even the big bronze hooks, you'll notice that point sometimes you'll lose them. Get a fish on and he gets off, and you come in, you bring your bait in, and you look, and that just the very tip of that bronze hook is bent like this. It hit that bone, and it got bent. It didn't penetrate. That's where these hooks are superior. They're going to get in before they won't bend. They'll get in.
Great. Well, hey, this has been a great chat here, Joe, and really appreciate you stopping by. And hey, we're going to have to do some more of this, and I know we've got some more products that we want to talk about with you too. So, thanks a million for coming in.
My pleasure.
All right. Thanks.
You bet.
Thanks, folks. Hope you enjoyed our little talk here with Joe Bucher.